when I began to look into the book of John a long time ago, one of the pivotal teachings that I've heard was a teaching that Manny did in the book of John. It was a whole bunch of CDs. And I listened to that. It really opened my understanding to a lot of the content of what really John was talking about. And I'm not really going to talk about that because he does a better job talking about that aspect of it than I do. But I'd like to talk to you about the book of John and the language of the Gospels according to the feast of the Lord. You see, when we learn about the feast, we look about the feast in the context of, well, how do you do it? When during the year and all that stuff. But in order to understand the ministry of Yeshua and why a lot of the things that he did, they surrounded certain specific dates. Would you agree with that? When he says, if anyone thirsty, drink of me. The question is, when did he do it? What time during the service? Which day of the feast? Which feast? And unfortunately, for a lot of people in the Christian faith, they look at the book of John, and the only verse that really matters is the first verse of the first chapter. They don't go beyond that. And they don't really see the amazing information about the feast within the book of John. So what I'd like to do is go through a particular short teaching about the temple service and what was going on behind what John was trying to talk about. He is trying to teach us something about the feast. As a matter of fact, if we go back to the traditional readings of the Haftorah portions that are read during this time of the year in Israel, we can pretty much pinpoint what Yeshua was reading in the middle of the week before he says, if anyone's thirsty, drink of me, and out of you shall come forth rivers of living waters. We know he was reading Ezekiel 38 and 39, Gog Magog. The Bible says he was teaching in the temple. But we never asked the question, what was he teaching? What day was it? How come he was doing that? Where in the temple? So when we read the book of John and the letters, we have to consider the history, the archaeology, the context, the legality of the language that so many of us disregard at times because we are looking at the Bible as a theological book. The Scriptures, in my opinion, is not a theological book. The Scriptures is the evidence and the history of our Messiah in the first century and the treaty that Elohim made with Israel on Mount Sinai. It's a treaty. It's a covenant. It's a renewed covenant. It's a treaty. But we never look at it from that perspective. We only look at it from a religious, where they agree with our theology. And if we do not understand the backdrop of the events that Yeshua said those words, then we're really never going to understand the impact on the deep spiritual and still prophetic picture of what he was trying to tell us. I mean, he did it right around the feast. Why? Because each feast represents something. And we know the basics of that, but now I think it's time for us to consider going a little deeper in the book of John, okay? So, the language of the feast in the book of John, the Gospels can be better understood if we study the language of the feast. How many of you have ever studied the book of John in the language of the feast? See, this is something that I like to bring forth, okay, and share with you. Now, right off the get-go in John chapters 20, verse 17, we have this particular evidence. It says, Yeshua said to her, after he resurrected, touch me not, for I am not yet ascended to my Father. But wait a minute. He says, touch me not, but then later on he appears to the disciples and everybody touches him. So what happened? Where is that so important to understand? Did you know that this expression is a temple language expression? When the priests will go into the altar to offer the blood and to sprinkle the blood, no one can touch it. That's what the priest will say before he will go up. That's an idiom, going up to the Father, going up to minister to him, because the altar represents the authority of the Lord on the earth. So Yeshua is acting now, that's the language that shows that Yeshua is acting in the priestly role for the heavenly tabernacle. Is this making sense? Are you with me so far? Don't get excited all at once. It's okay. All right? All right. So that's an example of the language of the temple within the letters of John. I believe, this is my opinion, I believe John was a Levite. I believe that. The language, the more I study the temple, the more I look into all this stuff, he had to know a lot of information on the temple, the way he presents things. Very unique to anybody else in the Gospels. Very unique when you understand the language. Another example is going to be the Amidah in the temple. In Luke chapters 1, verse 9, verse 10, and 11, right off the get-go, we have a very interesting evidence. In the Hebraic roots and in the Christian world, in the Messianic Judaism, not as much because they do a lot of liturgy. I understand why the liturgy is important. But I'd like to show you something that many people, when they come from the system, when a lot of Christian brothers will come into the Hebraic understanding and they see us doing a traditional liturgy, they don't quite understand it, but they don't realize that that's not new. That is Levitical, preserved by Rabbinical Judaism. Let me repeat that again. That is Levitical from the temple, preserved by Rabbinical Judaism today. In other words, the temple was destroyed, so they used elements of the temple service and they preserved it in the synagogue service to remind them of the way it was done in the temple. And now, will you read it with me? Luke chapters 1 verse 9. According to the custom of the priestly office, his lot was to enter into the temple of the Lord and burn incense. Okay, right, the Gospels tells us right from the get-go that there was a very important information about Zechariah that you need to know. First of all, from which order of the priestly line of the 24 priestly courses is he from? You need to know that because that encounter between him and Yeshua is extremely pivotal to establish Yeshua as Messiah. 1 Chronicles chapters 24. You can see that list. Okay? It says, read it with me, verse 10. The whole multitude of the people, read it, the whole multitude were praying at the hour of... Okay, so that tells me that while they were praying inside the temple, when Zechariah was offering the incense, by the way, did you know that was the only time in his lifetime that he got to offer the incense? No priest ever did that job twice in their lifetime. Coinky-dinky, that the Father wants to bring a message to to Zechariah, and then so happens every day, his whole life since he started the priesthood, he is casting lots in the morning in order to get duties of the temple. It never came his way, and now the only time he got to do that job, and he's there in the menorah, and then he's there doing the incense, an angel shows up. It was not by coincidence. It was all the move of the Creator to speak to a faithful servant. The question is, they are all praying outside as he is praying inside. So the question is to you, why were there prayers? Because they were all praying together. By the way, did you know what the word Selah? You know, in the Psalms, the word Selah, right? It's a musical pause. That's what everybody teaches, correct? And it is. But Joseph Good from Hatikva Ministries and my temple teacher, he studies the temple for 36 years. He's my temple teacher. So what happens is that he says, Rico, do you know what they will say when they will say Selah? We found out they say, the whole people, everyone, the moments the Levites will say Selah, all of the congregation inside the temple and outside the temple will prostrate themselves and say, Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Vaed. Blessed be his name and his kingdom forever and ever. Can you imagine 250,000 people in the feast, Brian? And now there they are singing the Hallel Psalms, the Psalms of praise. And then there's all those people, worshiping the Father. And then the Levites get Selah. They go Selah. And then everybody at one time, they knew what to do. They knew what to say. They prostrated themselves. And everybody says, blessed be his name and his kingdom forever and ever. Wow. What an impact. That means that they were not managing themselves as individuals. In the temple, they became one entity, one heart, one mind, one soul, one voice. And that's what we need to learn as a people. When we worship the Creator, we're doing it as one people. This is not an individual thing. Shabbat is all about Him. You follow? Now, in the Mishnah, which a lot of people have issues with, and it's still beyond me why, because the Mishnah contains a lot of the things that happened in the temple in the first century. It actually tells you exactly what Zechariah would have prayed before he went in to do incense. In the morning when they will cast lots and the priests, they will do all the prayers. In the Mishnah in Tamid 5:1, in the tractate Tamid 5, let me read it and then I'll break it down for you. The superintendent said to them, say one blessing. They said a blessing. Pronounce the 10 commandments. The Shema, O Israel, Deuteronomy 6. And it shall come to pass if you shall hearken. And the Lord spoke to Moses. Those are prayers that are found today in the Siddur today. Right before you go into the 18 benedictions that you do daily. That means that the priests, when they will go into the service in the morning, they have to say the 10 Commandments, all the blessings of the Shema, and all the blessings that are there by memory. All of them as one. And then at the end, right here, they blessed all the people with 3 blessings towards the end. True, emet, sure, avodah, and the blessings of the priest. What are all the blessings of the priest? Is this making sense so far? Are you with me? What I'm trying to do today is trying to engage you in considering looking into the historical aspect of the first century letters, apostolic writings. I think it's really important because we lose a lot of the really cool evidence to know how they handle themselves. And if we are following the first century faith, we have to imitate that. Because that's what we're trying to do. So this blessing and the blessing of priests, every time the priests will come in, the Ma'amud, they will come from their towns, right? Let's say if my family is the duty to do it in the temple this week, I will show up this morning on Shabbat or yesterday for Shabbat, and then this morning my service will start. Okay, I will have to do all those blessings. But the family of priests that was there before I showed up, they are coming out. They're leaving that day. They're leaving that day. They go back home unless it's the feast. They have to stay. So what happens after they will finish their weekly service, they will do a blessing. Did you know that blessing today is what traditionally is read in the synagogues after the person has the honor to come up and read the Torah? It's been preserved. So we know exactly the prayers that the people were praying when Zechariah was inside offering incense. Isn't that exciting? I'm going like, really, people? Come on now. For me to know what they were praying when the angel showed up? Think about it. He was there at the hour of prayer. When Daniel prayed at the hour of prayer, an angel showed up. When what's his name? Cornelius. When he prayed at the hour of prayer, an angel showed up. When Zechariah prayed at the hour of prayer, an angel showed up. Something I think we should learn from. But that's okay, though. I mean, I just want to get your interest out there, okay? All right, next. Now, the month of Elul, in John chapter 1, verse 23 says, read it with me, please. I am the voice of the... Come on, man. Help me out, people. Come on. It says, I am the voice of the one crying in the wilderness, make straight the way of the Lord, as Isaiah the prophet said. Okay. So, where is that found in Isaiah? Where is that found in Isaiah? Because we all can quote that verse in regards to Yeshua. But did John the Baptist just cry that out just because he was bored? And he just said, well, this sounds good. Just say a verse. Or can I submit to you that he was quoting a verse in a particular time frame during the year cycle? Because when you study with the rabbis, you learn something really quickly. That whatever they teach you is not by coincidence. They follow a pattern. That's why when you study the Torah portions and then there's a Haftorah portion that seems to have no connection with the Torah portion. That drove me crazy for years. I'm reading the Torah portion, I go to the prophets, and it has nothing to do with the Torah. What's going on? I found out later that sometimes when an important historical event occurs, to remember that event, they connect it with the Haftorah from the prophets to remind them of that event. That's why it's not connected with the Torah portion itself. So now I understand. So what did I have to do? Go back to the history to find out what happened during that time frame. Then I know why they put on that Torah portion, that Haftorah portion. Are you with me so far? Okay, so where was he getting from? When you go back and we study out, okay? Hit the button. There you go. Is that it? No, let me go back. Did it register them? Anyway, so when you look into the whole, let's go to Isaiah chapter 40. Isaiah 40. So I submit to you that when John said those words, he was teaching them during the time of the Haftorahs of consolation, the prophets of consolation. Okay? Now, I highly recommend you get the teaching that Manny has on the book of John. It's very, very good. That's why I learned about the Haftorahs of constellation. He made that connection before. So I do believe that when John said those words, he didn't say it at random at any time of the year. I believe that he did it at the time he's supposed to. He did it during a time of the year that they will be reading that. So there's a Shabbat when you start reading about the seven Haftorot, the prophets part of the consolation. And that verse, what he's quoting, listen to this. When he yelled out like that, he says, comfort, yes, comfort my people. Says your God, speak comfort to Jerusalem and cry out to her that her warfare is ended, that her iniquity is pardoned, that she has received from the Lord double of her sins, for all her sins. The voice of one crying in the wilderness, prepare the way of the Lord, making straight in the desert a highway for our God. Every valley shall be exalted, every mountain and hill shall be made low, the crooked places shall be made straight, and the rough places smooth. The glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together, for the mouth of the Lord has spoken. The voice said, cry out. And he said, why shall I cry? All flesh is grass. Do you see? It's comfort because of the dispersion. There's comfort in the Bible for Israel and restoration. The role of Messiah to return. Do you know that the language that is used here, according to the ancient Near Eastern language, John becomes now the royal messenger? He's making the way. He's opening the way. He's the one who takes the message, preparing the way for the messenger of the Lord, Malach Elohim. So when he quoted that verse, he wants everybody to go back and read it. Unfortunately, when we go and we read the Bible, we read the verse, but we never consider the message prophetically behind it. Anyone in the first century who understood the Torah, the Haftorahs of consolation, the prophets of consolation, the portions of the prophets, they knew that that's about restoration of the kingdom. They understood it. They knew what the message was. John was not just blurting things out just because he felt like saying it. He is bringing forth his ministry with a purpose. Do you have a purpose today? What is your purpose for your ministry today? Are we just going to stand on pulpits and just say whatever we want to say without having a purpose, without having a direction, without having something to really construct and build up? Or are we just trying to sound smart? That's really the question. John didn't care about his perspective of what people thought about him. When the disciples of John began to argue with the disciples of Yeshua, what did John say? I must decrease so that he must increase. In other words, my role here is to prepare the way. That's my role. I'm not here to gain honor from him. I'm not here to debate him. I'm not here to fight him. I'm not here to usurp his authority. I'm not here to encroach on his calling. I'm here to just prepare the way. I'm here to just play my role and then go. You notice that Yeshua's ministry fully turned into a ministry after John the Baptist died. Did you notice that? Some reason John the Baptist dies, he gets decapitated, and then Yeshua's ministry goes. And we can talk about that for a while. But what I want to do is try to make you aware. Let me go back. Can we go back for a minute? How come I'm not getting this? Go back to the beginning, could you? There we go. Let me see if I got it now. It does it show on yours? At all? Okay, let's go to John 6 then. Keep going forward. Here we go. Passover in chapter 6. In chapter 6 says, after this thing Yeshua went where? Read with me, guys. Went away to the other side of the Galilee, which also called the Sea of Tiberias, right? A great multitude followed him because they saw his signs which he did on those that were sick. Yeshua went up into the mountain and he sat with them, his disciples. Now the Passover of the feast of the Jews was at hand. Now it's interesting because this verse is talking about the sign of Messiah. How do you know Yeshua is the true Messiah compared to any other false Messiah that arose in Israel at that time frame? Listen to what he did. He took care of the needy, the sick, the homeless, the widows, the less fortunate. He treated them with equity. He treated them with dignity. He spent time with them. He treated them as equitable. Even though he's the Son of the living God, he didn't put himself above everybody else. He made them feel like they mattered. Do we make each other matter in the kingdom? Do we play games with people? Do we oppress people? Do we oppress the widows? Do we oppress the needy? Or we take care of them because that's what Yeshua did. So in other words, it's interesting. Yeshua didn't just want to be self-righteous and say, I'm going to go keep the feast perfectly. He taught us, don't come and keep the feast. Don't show up before the Lord if you don't take care of the righteousness and justice that the Father did. When they came out of Egypt, was Israel perfect? No. Did they commit sin? Yes. Did they disobey? Yes. This week's Torah portion is all about that. I mean, Korah, he had a great job. He was in charge. His family was in charge of taking the tabernacle, okay, equipping the tabernacle. In other words, you're putting everything. You build it up, you take it down. You put it up, you take it down. No, they didn't want that job. It's a family squabble. You have Korah, who was a what? A cousin of Aaron and Moses, and now they're fighting. What the Korah says, it's too much for you, brother. It's way too much. Leaders of congregation, you get this all the time. People who want to go in and want to take your job, you're doing too much. You need to remember that others can also teach. Yeah, but that doesn't mean that the Lord called you to do this job. You may be able to teach, but that doesn't mean you can be the leader. You may be able to do all that stuff, but it doesn't mean that you will be able to carry the responsibility to lead a congregation. So therefore, this Torah portion is perfect. Why? Because it teaches us that Yeshua led us, that John understood his role. He was not trying to encroach in the role of Messiah. He prepared the way. All of this is in the New Testament. All of this is found in those letters that we quote all the time. How many new things have you learned already in the little time that I've been doing this today? Right? We've been studying the New Testament for a long time. But if we don't look at the feast, not only from a prophetic picture, but also from the message behind it, then greater understanding will come. A foundation has to be laid down, and then you start building upon that. Okay? Next. Says a good king of Israel had to be known by the acts of kindness. He had to be a good shepherd, a good provider. He had to be a good patron. This is the way you knew. In the ancient world, when a king will come into power, he had to have social reforms. He had to establish equity for the whole kingdom. He had to treat the needy. Cyrus from Persia, he did that. He came into power, and then he sends the Jews back to the land of Israel, gave them money. So according to Israel, he was a righteous king. They became vassals of the Persian kingdom. Well, Yeshua is bringing the same message that Moses brought. Moses, they complain about food. He prayed to the Father gave them food. They complain about water, the Father gave them water. Their protection, the Father gave them protection. And still they want to return to Egypt. And still they complain about the land. So what does that tell me? And still you have people encroaching on each other's jobs. The best thing that happened to me in my life was learning how to play professional baseball and the baseball arena. You know why? It taught me to become a teammate. Let's talk about that for a little bit. Is that okay? I'm feeling led to go in that direction. See, baseball taught me something. As a little kid, my father taught me the great lesson. I was pretty decent. I was pretty good. I'm not trying to but I was pretty good. And my father, and I was frustrated with him because he would put me on the worst team. He would. But I didn't know the reasoning behind it. Then all of a sudden one day he goes, Hernan. See? He called me by my first name, Hernan. No, Hernancito. But no one can call me that. That's my father called me. He looked at me, he goes, mira que hay muchachos allí. Speaking in tongues, guys, come on. Loosen up, people. He says, look at that team over there. Are they good? Yeah, they're really good. They're the best. Out of that team in Little League, they had like 4 guys making it pro ball. I played with them later on, years later. It's kind of crazy. Hey, man, weren't you Little League? Yeah, okay, we played against each other. All right, so what happened is, he says, you see how good that team is? Yes. They win every year. Yes. They're loaded. Yes. You'll never play on that team. He was honest. Not because I wasn't good enough. It's just that they had too many good guys. And he goes, wouldn't you like to be, he told me this, un pez grande en una piscina pequeña o un pez pequeño en una piscina grande? He understands. You'd rather be a big fish in a small pond, or you'd rather be a small fish in a big pond. If you play on this team, then you'll get more playing time, and you need more playing time. Right now, championship should not mean anything. It's about you developing. Wow. And that always stuck with me. So now I want to bring that into what I'm doing now. Do we want to be a big fish in a small pond, or do we want to be a small fish in a big pond? Well, in the Torah, really, it's about empowering one another to bring everybody into the pond. See, because there's plenty of room, because it's not my pond. It's the Father's. You see what I mean? So it's like we can co-labor. We can work together. We don't have to be arguing with one another. We don't have to go against one another because we don't agree. There's plenty of space in my Father's kingdom. But we don't know our role. That's exactly what the temple is all about, guys. The temple is about understanding each other's roles. Do you know that the Levites cannot go certain places? They were holy unto the Lord as Levites, but they could not go certain places in the temple. There were markers that a Gentile cannot go into the temple courts. I'm talking about the temple. They can go into the court of the Gentiles. Only Israel can go here. There's a limit. Israel can go here. The Levites can go here. The priests can go there. Only one person can go beyond that point. They all work together. The Levites knew exactly what to do. The priests, they knew exactly what to do because every morning they would cast lots for duties. What is your calling? What is your duty in the kingdom? Is it to lead a congregation? It may be. Then find people who can help you, equip you, so that you can learn. You need to learn that foundation. Are you with me? See, we want to do things that God did not call us to do. I had to learn to sit and bite my time and study and learn from Monty, learn from Bill, learn from Eddie, learn from Brad Scott, learn from all these guys. The good, the bad. Because I'm not perfect. I made mistakes. For a long time I kept saying, I'm not ready for a local congregation because my temperament. I understand my temperament. But I've been working at it. So you know how the Lord's been training me? Bits at a time. Take tours to Israel. People can only stand you 15 days at a time. Right? Monty, don't you think it's a good training ground? Going to Israel? And then you just going around, something happened here, and then people show up late, and then people don't care sometimes, and they just go take pictures, they don't really want to learn, and you just want to, because you're in the land of the king, you follow? And then you just get frustrated because they don't love it like you do, but they love something else. And then all of a sudden, at one point in the trip, they get all excited. And then you get all excited, you're trying to just try to ride that wave. Until you put them back on the plane and, hallelujah, I'm going home. But now, for some reason, I want to do it more and more. I'm willing to do back to back. That's crazy. That means that the Father's training me. I have to deal with different personalities. I have to deal with different situations. I have to deal with different adversities because I know that my time will come when I'm not going to be able to travel as much. So He's preparing another role for me. I'm learning to be a teammate. I'm learning to equip one another. Stop competing for the job, guys. We don't give each other jobs. It's the King who does that. We're all the servants. You want to really have a job in the kingdom? Then put in your time in the study. Ask Him to enlarge your territory. Obey the simple commandments that He gives you. And when He trusts you, He'll open the door. When I met Monty, I was in Puerto Rico and I have nothing. Literally, I have nothing. Right? And I had to sit and open doors for somebody else. And I was not jealous. I was not envious. I was just happy somebody was willing to co-labor with me. You know? And everything happened because I learned to wait. Has it been rocky along the way? I've learned my lessons. Yes, and I keep learning them. But I'm thankful that the Father still loves me to teach me. See, we read the Gospels, but we really don't spend time knowing what happens behind it. I mean, all throughout, you understand the roles. What is the role of Passover? To teach us about redemption. So guess what? Yeshua goes and preaches in the Galilee, takes care of the sick, and then you go, all those people have to go to Jerusalem to bring an offering to their Father. Imagine if you're sick your whole life, right? And they tell you it's all about redemption. It's all about restoration. It's about reconciliation. It's about renewing of the covenant on Passover, right? And you're sick your whole life. Yeshua, the messenger, the Son of the living God, who sits at the right hand of the Father, comes around and you find favor in His eyes. And He extends His right hand and heals. The Father heals you through Him. Aren't you going to be grateful to go to Jerusalem and bring Him your best? So that means that the miracles that He was doing was redirecting the people to remember who their God was. The miracles were designed in order so that you will remember who's your provider, who is Yahweh Rapha, your healer, who is your comforter, who is the one who restores you. So now when you go to Passover, you sit at that table and you said, I am so thankful that my patron, my king, my shield, my strength remembers me, and He did not outcast like the people did, like the priests did, like the Pharisees did. He treated me with equity. I was humble. I did not know all about the Torah, but the Father remembered my prayer, and look, He answered through healing. How much of an impact will that make for your gratefulness? Are we grateful people? I don't think we are. We forgot the times that when you were in the church and we did not know a whole bunch of stuff. The moment we learned about Yeshua, we got all excited. But no one really taught us about the feast and the message behind it. We are exactly in the same place as those less fortunate people of Israel that the system or religion did not want. That the Shammai did not teach because they were poor and they had no money. That Hillel would, but Shammai wouldn't. That the priests were so corrupted, the high priesthood, they were buying the priesthood from the Romans and they were not the proper line of Aaron. And here comes Yeshua, the messenger, the Son, the living Elohim, right? Who comes now. And he says, I'm going to treat you with importance. My Father sees you. My Father hears you. My Father has given me a job and a message to bring you into the fold. He wants you to know that the leaders, they're not following according to my Father's heart. But I'm going to lead you. I'm going to teach you. I'm going to guide you what pleases Him. My message is not mine, He said, but the Father who sent me. So now if you're listening to this, you're going to say, wow, He must really love me. Because remember, there were only like 5,000, 6,000 Pharisees in the first century. So what happened to the rest of the community? Frowned upon, looking down because they didn't know Torah? See, the God of Israel is so awesome. He is so good that if you bring a sacrifice into the temple for a asham, for a guilt offering, and you bring a sacrifice for an olah, which is a free will offering, you didn't do anything wrong. He committed a sin, but he's coming to the temple in order to restore relationship, to be revindicated, to be, right? Did you know that the place, the book of Leviticus tells us, the place where you will bring your olah, that's exactly the same place that you will bring your asham. You want to know why? You want to know why? You want to know why? Yeah. Because He doesn't want to embarrass you. Imagine if He had a place here for the Asham offerings, for sin. And the people see that, they go like, I wonder what little Brian did over there. Look at him, he's got to go cry harder because you committed a sin. No. See, the Creator protects your integrity. He creates your honor. He protects your honor. He protects your name. You see, so if you do something wrong, as long as you come with a contrite spirit and a humble heart, He go to the same place as a free will offering. Why? Because He's protecting your honor or what people say about you. So if that's the case, then why don't we protect His honor and what people say about Him? Forget about the teaching. Listen, it's time for this kingdom to start honoring our King. That's right. It's time to stop focusing on things that don't edify the kingdom. Everything Yeshua did in the book of John is to point us to the Father, to point us to His will. Constantly teaching the people to remember those less fortunate. Constantly telling Israel to return to the covenant, to do it His way, to do it His way. Don't do it your way. That's what got Israel in trouble, according to the imaginations of their own heart. It'll come a time that we will be accountable for the gift that the Lord has given us, and we continue to do things the way we want to do it because it seemed good to us. Newsflash, we serve Him. He doesn't serve us. That's right. That's the way it works. Remember when we were in the world in idolatry, in disobedience, in rebellion, outcast, defiled, impure? Do you know that in that situation that you were in, the Father heard you, inclined His ear, He extended mercy and grace, brought you into the fold, taught you the most basic principles, the name of Yeshua, then the Sabbath, then the feast, a little bit more Torah, and after 2 years, now we're not good for anybody because we know everything. I'm very disappointed. I'm very upset. I'm actually very concerned the direction we're going. Yeah. We need to learn to be grateful again. Right. To have that love, to just on the most basic principles, we can take that and go out there and say, my God, my King, my shield, He's good and faithful and true. And if you dare believe in my King and my shield, He will never let you be ashamed. John constantly, all through the letters, he's trying to let us know what his purpose was. To prepare the way, John the Baptist, to prepare the way. And in the letter of John, he's always trying to outline for us what he wants to do. Let me give you an example. Let's go to John chapter 7. Are you with me so far? I don't know how much more time I got. You got to stop me. 5. Okay. John 17. Sorry, John 7. John 7, we have a very interesting verse. Yeshua screamed out of his lungs. On that last day of the great day of the feast, Yeshua stood and cried out, saying, "If anyone thirsts, let him come to me and drink. For he who believes in me, as the scripture says, out of his heart will flow rivers of living waters." We read that all the time. We quote it from the heart. But when was that during the year? If you talk to a Christian brother who doesn't know, ask him, when did that happen during the year? What was the ritual that was going on in the temple during that time that he said those words? What psalms were being read the moment that he was saying those words? Again, if John quoted something at a particular time, I submit to you that Yeshua quoted that at a particular time. The whole temple service was actually the exercise, and it was the way to teach the kingdom about prophecy, about redemption, restoration, reconciliation. Everything was designed to teach you and point to him and his purpose. The feast is also like pointing to his purpose. The Sabbath, the same thing. They will sing in the Hallel Psalms. They were doing the water ceremony that I don't have the time today to expand on that. But everybody responded in a particular way. But when you read chapters 7 from the beginning, and then you go to that verse, you don't realize that the whole week has gone by. We read the chapter as if it's all happening the same day, when it's not. He is basically outlining for you the events that happened the 7th day of Tabernacles, and then the 8th day when Yeshua said that. The last great day, Simchat Torah. The water ceremony that was going on in the temple. Just by studying the water ceremony alone, you get a great understanding of the prophecy, which is Isaiah chapters 12. So as the scripture says, is this making sense to you? Chapter 12 says, "And in that day you will say, O Lord, I will praise you, though you were angry with me, your anger turned away, and you comfort me. Behold, Elohim is my salvation. I will trust and not be afraid. For Yah, the Lord, is my strength and my song. He also has become my salvation. Therefore with joy you will draw water from the wells of salvation. And in that day you will say, praise the Lord, call upon his name, declare his deeds among the people. Make mention to it that his name is exalted. Sing to the Lord, for he has done excellent things. This is known in all the earth. Cry out and shout, O inhabitants of Zion, for great is the Holy One of Israel in your midst." He just told them, go to Isaiah, and then you know who I am. If you go to Isaiah, then you know who I am. If you go to Isaiah, you know who I am. Did you get that? You see, what we need to remember, the scriptures are not written just to only give us a historical account. The scriptures are written in order for us to know the character, the honor, the heart, the loyalty, the oath-making, the covenant strength of the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And you, ladies and gentlemen, have been called to be the witnesses of that covenant. You have been called to continue to proclaim the feast. You don't declare feasts, you proclaim them. We are the kingdom. I beg of you, let us continue to follow the cloud. Right now, we don't even know the teachers who really have the heart of the Lord. We follow everybody on Google. Anything's on Google, you follow. We need to be a little bit more mature to understand that even myself as a teacher, I also have to continue to learn and have teachers. And we need to continue to recognize that the kingdom is not ours. Look, the Torah tells us about his character, his creative power, his willingness to come into covenant. He teaches us who are his people when they come into oppression by the enemy. He is powerful to bring them out with a mighty strong arm and strong power. He feeds them, he leads them, he protects them, he guides them, and still they turn against them. Are you going to do the same thing? That's what's happening today among us. People are now finding fault with the land, with the people, with the covenant, and with the priesthood. I mean, Korah found issues with the priesthood. He died. That's encroachment, ladies and gentlemen, and I don't want this kingdom. You know, us as teachers, and I'm sure if you talk to Monty long enough, he's going to tell you. He may not voice it all the time, but sometimes can be very disappointed. We do our best, and we're not perfect. But if I do something wrong, I promise you I'll change it. We can't do this alone. Do you think you've been called to do this random? I mean, why didn't he call Billy Graham to do this message? Oh, the guys that everybody knows. Why did he call me, little Puerto Rican guy? Why did he call you? We are important. By the way, the young guys, this is for you. You are our hope.
That's right.
You see what's going on? I want to apologize to you because right now some people that call themselves teachers, they're shaming our Messiah, they're shaming the Torah, they're shaming one another. And I pray that I never do that. I pray that I always be honorable to hopefully, I pray, to be a good example to you. And if I do something wrong, I pray that you pray for me so that the Father will minister to me and I'm quick to repent so that the kingdom continue to move forward. So I will learn my role, that I know what He wants me to do, not to encroach on somebody else's. We need you. We need you to stand up and be a Joshua and a Caleb. When people start doubting the land, don't just join the wave because it sounds good. Go back and look it up. Search it, verify it. And then stand up for the word of the Lord, guys. Stand up for my King. Many of us rejecting our Messiah. Really? We're shaming our Messiah after He led you in the camp? Rejecting the hope of salvation? Rejecting the door that allows us to go into the kingdom by grace through faith? We need you to stand up and defend it. I watch your Facebooks. I know what you say and I know what you read. And I know what you write. It's not only in Camp Yeshua that you need to stand up and give a witness. It's during the year to be men and women of God and say, this is not acceptable. Amen. I'm counting on you guys and I'm calling you out. I'm challenging you. We need you. You are hope. That generation. All these children right here. All these children out here. Come on up. If not, they're finished. All the children out here are what we're striving so hard to teach. And I pray when I'm no longer around in another 100 years, that somebody will remember one thing. I just want to be a good servant. Do you want to be a good servant? Please stand up. Repeat after me. Shema Israel. Adonai Eloheinu. Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod. Malchuto Leolam Vaed. Father of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, we thank you, we praise you. I pray that everything we do, I pray that everything we say, I pray that everything and the way we act is only be a good example to let everybody know that you are true, you are faithful, you are holy, you are exalted. We are your servants and we need you. We desperately need your guidance, O Lord. I choose to go forward to your land. Those the giants are in the land, it doesn't matter because you said that we could take the land, that you will protect us. And I will raise my hand on an oath, my King, that I will continue to tell the nations to believe you, to trust you. Because you did it once, you'll do it again because you're faithful and true. My Father, my King, I pray that everyone here would join together as one people to honor you, to praise you, to uplift you, and to render honor the way you deserve to be rendered honor. In the name of Yeshua, by the merits of our Messiah, I humbly pray these things. Amen. Shabbat Shalom.